This is Roger Simon for Pajamas Media, and I'm here with Dana Milbank of the Washington Post, the guy who covers the White House and other such places, in the newsroom of the very Washington Post, not on the set of All the President's Men, although it looks remarkably like it. Welcome, Dana.
Thanks, Roger.
We were also this morning together at this the event hosted by DLA Piper, where a number of prognostications were made about the election. Let's start with this, Dana. What's your prognostication?
I will just parrot out the Charlie Cook line, since he knows better than all of us. He said 20 to 35 House seats, and he said 4 to 6 Senate seats. I can't improve on that.
The editor of your paper, I read in editor and publisher on their website about a week ago that he said everybody on our newsroom now wants to blog. Is there any sense to that?
I don't know, but I mean, I think everybody here has a sense that if you look, every quarter we find out circulation's down 3% from the year before, not making as much money in ads. There's all kinds of growth on the website, albeit not a whole lot of money coming in from the website yet. So people are realizing that's their future. So I don't know if everybody wants to write a blog, but I think everybody wants to figure out what their place is going to be. So we're finding ways to try to make ourselves relevant in a changing media landscape.
And one of the factors that was involved, I think, and many of us think, in the rise of the blogosphere was the criticism of bias in the mainstream media. Do you think this criticism is fair? Let's start there.
Well, I mean, I think I quarrel with the notion that that's what's responsible for the rise in blogs. I think the rise in blogs is just there's a new technology out there that allows people to do something they didn't do before. I think it's just unleashed a lot of people to express whatever energies that existed there previously. We get complaints every day about the claims of bias from all sides all the time, and sure, every human being has biases, and that's always been a part of this business, and it always will be part of this business. I don't think that I think it's unrelated to the declining circulation, and I mean that's a technology-driven thing entirely. But so I think there are two trends going on independently of each other.
Well, how do you make the distinction between bias and objectivity? How does that really work?
Well, I don't think people use the notion. People say the word objective. I think it's kind of nonsense. We're not objects, and you can't be perfectly independent of the world you're living in. It's just not something that's not humanly possible to do. Now, I think the goal is somewhat of neutrality, meaning that you're not a partisan. You're not taking sides, and I think that's really the goal of this newspaper. Is not to say that we're people who have cannot actually form no judgments in our own heads, but that you've got to be fair to all sides that you're writing about. But I don't think there's anything phony about the efforts to try to suppress bias, or to put it in a more positive way, to be fair. And I think that's what my colleagues do here all the time. It doesn't work all the time. Sometimes something comes out and you sort of wince and say that looks like you've got an agenda there. And the truth is, I find the longer you're in this business, the more you come to the conclusion that pretty much everybody in this town is full of crap.
What about the anonymous sources issue? I know that's one that the blogosphere has been criticizing the mainstream on. What's the policy on anonymous sources here at the Post?
Gosh, I can't speak as a corporate policy matter, but obviously they've been trying to cut down on the use of them. I don't use them at all because it's a general rule, because I don't need to, and I'm not doing investigative sensitive things. Now, some of my colleagues here have, won Pulitzer Prizes and exposed many things that they could not have done without the use of anonymous sources. So there's one extreme, like what I do, there's never an excuse for it, or just about never. At the other extreme is, if you're going to lose your job or perhaps your life for having your name attached to it, well, definitely. And then there's the in-between, and I think people just try to go through it and say, when is this actually adding some value? When are we getting information that we couldn't get in some other way?
I know that the New York Times has been under it recently with this new revelations from the Hoekstra Committee regarding a staffer who they've seemed to have, I don't know the details, isolated the leaker here. Do you think there's any culpability on the part of newspapers when they take information like this from someone who's leaking intelligence?
Well, that seems certainly is the administration's position, trying to enforce the 1917 Espionage Act, where it's not only a crime, as has been generally accepted, to leak national security information, classified secrets, but even to possess it or to pass it on to another, even if you're not a government official. So that basically, if we're to take that seriously, that means what most journalists and lobbyists and lawyers and others do in this town is inherently illegal.
Dana, you were a poster child for bias when you appeared on the Keith Olbermann show. How did you deal with that? What happened, and what was the flack that you took?
Well, I've been a poster child in many different posters over many years for various complaints. So many people continue to use that image of me, on the web now that I suspect it'll sometime arrive on my tombstone, decorated in the orange hat and the orange vests, and don't forget the orange gloves. If that's what people want to do, I think that it's important for people to have fun, and. When the vice president goes quail hunting and shoots his buddy, that's funny.
Is this a political event or just an anecdotal event? Because it's completely an accident.
Well, I don't see any way to really separate the two. My job is to write about politics in an interesting way. So, when the vice president shoots somebody on a hunting trip, it's by definition political, and it's interesting, and of course it should be. Now, to get back to your question of bias, does that mean I don't like the vice president because I wore the hat and the vest? Does it mean I'm opposed to his policies? I would argue no. I think it's making a joke about his poor aim.
Thanks a lot, Dana, for having us here at the Washington Post, and thank you for the interview.
My pleasure.